Yeah, I want to go into a little device that I know I went over this a few times before with the magnetic pulse, but I basically look at a lot of different things with alternative medicine, especially the healing frequencies, the magnetic pulse, the magnets, and also microcurrents that can be used to help heal or help hinder viruses. There's a lot of wild stuff in this field that actually has some solid research going back a long ways. Yeah, I think the real problem with the healing with frequencies and magnets and uh, doing something with that medically, the real problem is the financial angle because basically the devices just don't wear out. I mean, if you got a pharmaceutical chemical formula, you got to go back to your drug dealer slash, I call it a drug dealer, the pharmacist, basically a glorified drug dealer that gives you your medicine again to work. Now, if you have some kind of electronic device that produces a frequency or a microcurrent or produces a magnetic pulse, it's just going to go and go and go and go, and it's never going to wear out basically until electronics break, which could be decades from now. So they're going to lose a lot of money on pharmaceutical. Now, I saw something, I don't want to say the name of it because I don't want to compare this device to it exactly, but it looks a hell of a lot like this, or even the Soda Instruments device where it has a paddle with does a magnetic pulse. It looks a hell of a lot like this device, except it's in a big machine. And what it was used, and I saw this actually someplace being demonstrated in a video, where a person, and now this device, this magnetic pulsar, this wand, actually has a north side and a south side. Normally use the north side. The south side could stimulate growth, but if you're using this to try to help heal the body, if you have a virus or a bacterial infection or some kind of cancer, the south side could stimulate the virus and the bacteria and the cancer. You want to use the north side. That's at least 95% of the time. You always want to use the north side. The only time you use the south side is if there's absolutely no infection or any kind of problem involved and you want to help stimulate growth. Just want to put that out there first. But they had a device that looked, basically they said it had a magnetic coil in it. They said this device had a magnetic coil in it, and it produced a magnetic pulse. And what they were using it for was to treat depression. Because it says the big disadvantage of using pharmaceuticals is that they have so much side effects. If they're trying to stimulate neuroactivity in the brain or whatever it is, because you have depression or whatever the hell it is, if you give you a pill, it goes throughout your whole body and it has different effects on other parts of the body, where it's actually just being used. They only want it to stimulate a certain area of the brain, the neurotransmitters or whatever. So what they had was like a coiled pulse, a coil that put out an electronic magnetic pulse. And supposedly they advertise that you go to this thing without to the doctor, the psychiatrist, or whatever, and you don't take any meds, and they pulse the part of the brain down to a certain distance to try to stimulate the brain and alleviate depression. Which makes me wonder if this thing can actually have some effect on that. I don't know. I hate to say because I couldn't reference anything, but I just saw, in other words, if you go to a psychiatrist, they're going to charge you umpteen dollars. They're going to charge you for the visit, and I always wonder if something like this could substitute for what they're doing. I almost wonder. Now, I can tell you something else that's not well known with that. Like a lot of times where this magnetic pulse is actually used more frequently is pain management. Say, for instance, you got an injury and it's healing. You sprained your wrist and you're pulsing it. That helps with the pain management. It does. It seems to work. That's more traditional. But treating depression, I don't know. It looks, I've seen something, and from what they're describing, it sounds like this device, but you wouldn't necessarily need to see a specialist to use that device or pay so many dollars per, so much session, when you can just buy the device yourself and use it all you want. Now, the other area where I saw where they use this in pulsing the brain was with strokes, where a person had a stroke and they had, like, their arm was paralyzed. Because it was because there's damage to the brain. The blood clot caused certain brain cells to die because they got starved of blood supply. So what happens is when you pulse the brain, it causes more stimulation to other parts of the brain that will help reestablish new learning. You'd be using other parts of the brain you never used before, because most people don't, people don't use but a tiny fraction of their brain. So this was actually, it's being experimented with in Italy, but I've saw things on YouTube and stuff where it helped people recover from strokes. Now, where you can safely say it helps recover from strokes is in the world of animals. Because actually, if with animals, they've used magnetic pulse to help heal animals left and right. I mean, if you heal an animal, you cure an animal with something that's other than pharmaceutical. You give them some kind of magnetic stimulation or whatever, or you give them, you use one of the frequencies on them, like the Schumann Earth resonance, through a device like this on setting 3. If you do that to an animal and you cure them, and it's a dog or it's a cat, it's fine. If you do that with a person, you're in trouble. That's the way it works. It's so stupid. But I just want to point out, it looks like, I'm using my common sense here. I'm looking at this thing, and I don't want to say the name of it. I know the name of it. It's a technology that they're using to treat depression with. And what they're saying is their device, which is not this, but it looks a hell of a lot like the paddle on this, their device produces a magnetic pulse through the size of a coil, about the size of a fist, which is about this size, and I saw that, to the brain to help stimulate neurotransmitter activity, so you can directly stimulate the part of the brain that's causing depression without using pharmaceuticals. And to tell you the truth, it looks to me like basically the same deal as this thing. So anybody who wants to experiment with this, because as far as I know, there's absolutely no danger of using this on the brain. The other thing is, when you turn it on, I like this particular Clark unit because you can you have a volume setting. You see the volume setting right here. You can turn it down, and when you turn it down, it doesn't give it as an intensive pulse, but it gives more pulses. So I kind of like this one. So if you're just doing the brain, you might want to use the north side, and I don't know if that's going to help with depression or not, but it looks very similar to the same type of thing that's being done in another device that's very expensive, because you need to see a specialist. You got to pay him so many dollars for each session, and I'm sure your insurance covers it and stuff. But just want to put it out as a suggestion that possibly, maybe that could possibly help with depression, the magnetic pulse, because some people obviously are saying that that's a new technology that's being used to treat depression, but by professionals. So, this thing costs you $334 one time, and you can use it all you want. I mean, it's going to last you for years and years and years before you ever have to replace a capacitor. Then it's going to go for more years after that. So, might be a cheap depression type of treatment, maybe. If you want to experiment with it. I don't know. I can't tell you because I don't have depression. I guess if I went to a psychiatrist, he could say, I have depression, because everybody's got depression. There's something wrong because we need business. I know it's a psychiatrist. I know what all these medical guys are about. It's about money. Money. But anyway, that might be a good suggestion, because I'm beginning to wonder, there's a hell of a lot more uses to some of these products than they're initially touted as. Magnetic pulse is originally touted as helping with pain management, but it also does other things. It can help stimulate the brain to relearn if you had a stroke, and maybe it could possibly help with minimizing depression or have some kind of effect on it, because that's what it appears that some other people are doing in the psychiatric field. I don't want to name who they are or what that product is, because they'll probably tell me that this cheap thing that I got here for $334 is not the same as what they're using, but somehow I think it's pretty damn similar, and one can cost you a hell of a lot less money than the other. So that's my tip. Magnetic pulse DIY type might be a smart way to experiment with, see if you could self-heal from some depression too, if you have that.